How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it breaking down all the latest news and rumblings in Metsland. It is officially day 2 of MLB winter meetings there in Orlando, and we're going to break down all the key news and rumblings headlined by the fact that Pete Alonso is attending this year's winter meetings. We'll get into not only why that is, what teams he'll be meeting with, where does he stand with the New York Mets as of now, and everything in between, but we're going to also talk about the big domino that needs to fall. Why does Kyle Schwarber need to be the first big bat off this year's market before opening the floodgates for Alonso and everyone else in company? Why are the New York Mets so heavily connected to Schwarber this offseason? Continue through latest reporting that we'll get into today. We'll also talk about the latest regarding guys like Framber Valdez and maybe some contradiction that's been going on there in the reporting scene. We'll also get into the latest signing for the New York Mets, that being Mr. Carl Edwards Jr. You guys may know him. I know him plenty during his time in DC. We'll talk about that latest pitcher pickup for the New York Mets and what that means for them moving forward, and we're going to get into plenty more again in tonight's live show for a second straight live show covering the winter meetings beginning 8 p.m. Eastern, everybody. And it's not just any live show covering the winter meetings. We're doing a big giveaway. As a further thank you for 36,000 subscribers on the platform, we're giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber randomly in tonight's live show. So if you guys weren't planning to attend, make sure you attend for your chance to not only win the jersey, but interact with us and hopefully witness some breaking news live in real time, because you may be finding yourself wondering, Wardy, why are you playing Juan Soto highlights beside you? And the reason why I'm doing that is because, folks, exactly a year ago on December 8th of 2025, and we'll be live right at the exact same time as the news officially happened a year ago, which was right around 10 p.m. Eastern, broken from John Heyman. As you guys all know the story by now, but let's go through the emotions again, everybody. One of our biggest shows ever on the platform live in real time was to find out the news that, yes, Juan Soto inked his contract at $765 over 15 years with the New York Mets. And I was grateful not only to be live reacting to that, and if you want to see my clip, go back to the live stream on our live stream segments. It has almost 50,000 views on it on YouTube, and the clip I posted on yesterday getting us set for these winter meeting discussions, because I told you guys the last time we covered day 1 of winter meetings, something special happened. It was me yelling a whole lot of F-bombs, freaking out that we signed Soto. So I won't do that for the sake of having this being a nice, calm start to the video, but I did want to show you guys this one final thing, and then we'll get into all the topics that we're going to break down in today's discussion.
Thinking about the various teams still involved, he had great organizations pursuing him. He had arguably the best organizations in baseball and some of the best cities in our country pursuing him.
I mean, this is a shotgun marriage, right? I mean, he's under pressure too, because he's got to make a decision.
The most anticipated week of the Major League Baseball offseason gets underway on Monday. A ton of anticipation around both Mets and Yankees fans.
I just thought that if he was going to stay in New York, don't know what the other bids were, if he was thinking about going elsewhere, that he would choose the Yankees.
Juan Soto reportedly wants to have a strong relationship from ownership down.
Generally, these meetings have been about ownership.
It starts with Steve Cohen being that X factor, being a more personal owner.
Didn't get any indication that, that we were the preferred spot. The best I could get out of them, I checked the owner's box, whatever that means. And better than nothing, but certainly I felt not enough to make him go across town.
So major shout out once more to the New York Mets organization for having me be a very small piece to the puzzle at their 2-part series of The Pursuit on the Millennium Juan Soto, an exclusive multi-part doc that they did on their YouTube channel. They also broadcast it that we saw. Of course, it was after it was on MLB Network at one point. I'm on other stations. So thank you so much to each and every one of them. It would have obviously been even crazier if this was a circumstance where we were able to have not just us live the way that we were, but if it was like a stadium setting. That's the thing that I always think about. Maybe this is the future of off-season news, and I really think it could be, where people start to gather and get together separately, like just fans in general, separate from the actual winter meetings itself, when there's an expectation that a big splash is going to happen, the way that there was so much buildup for Juan Soto in this signing. Imagine if there was a circumstance where you could get a very cheap ticket or a free ticket into Citi Field or into some form of stadium or venue where you could all kind of live react to these things in real time together. as a community instead of just chiming in to say my live stream in the current fashion that you guys do. I think that's the next step after seeing how dramatic that move was, how much we all reacted online to it. A historic, a monumental signing, certainly one that has changed the future forever for the New York Mets as a franchise. And that's all I have to say about Juan for now, but very grateful once more to be part of that clip. Thank you so much again to the entire Mets organization for that. But all right, guys, let's begin the discussion. Let's get into this one. There was a piece that dropped earlier today from John Heyman of the New York Post. As you guys can see here, everybody, New York Post exclusive from Mr. Mike Puma. Pete Alonso expected to drive to winter meetings to meet with teams. Red Sox and Orioles are among teams on his schedule. As you guys can see here, Pete Alonso will be at the winter meetings. Again, reaffirmed from SNY. It is unclear if the Mets will meet with Alonso. So I'm sure the quick reaction is Pete Alonso is attending the winter meetings. Why is Pete Alonso attending the winter meetings? And this is something that, and Pete is also 31 now, so disregard the graphic where it says 30 down below. I made this graphic at the start of the offseason, and his birthday was just a day ago, so my apologies for that one. But point stands here with Pete Alonso. Why is he attending the winter meetings? Well, you could say on one hand, it's because he is a Florida native. He lives in Florida in the offseason, and that isn't just because the Mets are based in St. Lucie for spring training. Like, he legit is a Florida guy. As we know, he went to Florida for college as well with Harrison Mater, among others. But that's, I think, only half or less than half the factor as to why this is happening. And, of course, what I'm saying is not only backed by what I've heard, but also it's opinion to a degree. So if you guys want to take it with a grain of salt, that's completely fine and valid. You have all the right in the world to do that. I believe, given the fact that the wide reporting has been out there, that Pete Alonso's market for a second consecutive offseason is not strong, it is not robust, it is not overly deep with teams, it's not even currently looking, it's not even at half a dozen teams currently, or if it is, it's very preliminary if that's the case. Alonso needs to boast his market. He needs to sell himself. He has to go ahead and pitch himself. You know, I kind of think of this to a degree being the circumstance of Pete walking in the room as if he's Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when no one's in the living room, or John Travolta from Pulp Fiction, and, you know, he's just standing around like, where is everybody? That kind of vibe. You know, who wants me? Problem is, people don't want Alonso as much as I think maybe Pete was initially anticipating, especially at his initial asking price or the 7 years. I mean, are you kidding me? Come on. I mean, I got a bridge to sell you. Think Pete's getting 7 years. And I've sold a lot of bridges lately, for better or for worse. So when you look at the market shape up right now for Pete Alonso, it's not a great one. And when you hear teams like the Red Sox and the Orioles, you're like, okay, yeah, that was expected. We know the Red Sox like Alonso. We know Alonso likes the Red Sox. This is stuff that we've covered here on the platform many times, especially recently, just over the past 24 to 48 hours or so. But how high do the Mets have, pardon me, not the Mets, but Alonso has, say, someone like the Red Sox organization on his radar to, in fact, sign with them? How much would he love the idea of going to the Baltimore Orioles? Not entirely sure, but what I am sure of is that Pete Alonso's been a New York Met through and through his entire career. I think there's a greater likelihood still than not that he returns as a New York Met. I think the greater likelihood is in direct hand with the fact that his market is not shaping up well. You know, we went from at one point thinking, okay, maybe Alonso's going to get a 5-year deal with a 6-year option. Now you're hearing rival execs out there, various execs, mind you, and people in the agency as is, a lot of people at the meetings right now stating universally that some people don't even know if Alonso's going to get a guarantee of even at 4 years. So what does that mean? Pete Alonso, even after having another very good, very polished, very good, very dominant season for the New York Mets on the offensive end, the jury's still out when it comes to really how much do teams want someone like him. Because, and there's a couple of very specific reasons for this. And I was actually just texting my buddy, Giraffe Neck Mark, you guys know him in the space, obviously, before recording this video now. Because I sent him literally the gif of John Travolta walking in the room for Pulp Fiction, you know, how he's looking around, no one's there. I said, that's Pete right now, because Pete Alonso is the best version of right-handed hitting sluggers that are bat first, provide little to no defensive value, and say what you will about Pete, He was in the second percentile in outs above average this past year defensively. Miss me with the nonsense like he's a plus defender. He's not. Makes great scoops, stays healthy, lays his body out, but that doesn't take you far when you can't make a simple underhanded toss to first base or be competent at first base consistently. And Alonso has not been that each of the past couple years and his walk years in 2024 and 2025. For Pete Alonso, he is in the very unfortunate circumstance that he's a part of, to a degree, a dying breed in today's game. Teams don't have the appetite nor the interest to want to long-term invest in guys past the age of 30 that are big right-handed sluggers when there's more of an immediate demand for left-handed power. That's why the Mets really do like Schwarber, and we'll get into that more here in a little bit in today's video and furthermore in tonight's live stream. But the market is not at all in his favor because the player profile is not as demanding as what it once was, especially, say, a decade ago, and the mid-2010s, right in the heart of juice baseball era still going on. You know, when the ball's flying ridiculously, you want as many home run hitters as possible. I'm not saying that you don't want home run hitters, because you absolutely do, but Alonso falls in this unique category where if his bat at all significantly drops off in the next couple of years, there's his value. You know, people say, oh, why is a Luis Arraez a guy that doesn't have nearly as much of the market that he used to as a valuable talent? And that's because no one cares about just having a guy that can hit 300. No one cares about having a guy that doesn't strike out at all if he's incompetent at almost every single position he plays defensively. Doesn't matter that he's versatile. If he's bad defensively in every position, that's a problem, and there's no power. You know, you need to at least have something instead of just having one thing. If you don't have that one thing, you have nothing. That's the case for the Rise. If he doesn't have a great eye, if he doesn't have good contact ability, he brings nothing else to the table. For Pete Alonso, if Pete Alonso does not provide the bat, he has nothing else to provide. He is not a good base runner. He's very much so not a good defender. And he's someone that will hold a team back in those respective areas unless his offense can power through and shine through the way that it has plenty of times throughout his career. And I'm not here at all to throw slander or slight Alonso. I love Pete, and I want him back. Let me go on record continuing to say that. But I understand why the Mets, like many teams, have now this hard line yet again in the sand as to how they value him. And how they value him is not as someone on a 7-year contract looking for north of $200 million, but more so of a man falling on the 3-4-year category and north of 100, 140, 125 million. So, yes, I know that Pete doesn't like the idea of this becoming a reality. I'm sure if he found himself hearing this at all, he'd be frustrated, being like, what is this short schmuck yapping about? He's not helping my marketability. To a degree, I'm not trying to help it, Pete, because I want you to fall back into the Mets' hands, truthfully. So if there's anything that I could do that could make things negative on your front for the sake of benefiting my club, absolutely, I'm inclined to do that. But please don't take it personal. I just mean it as a fan that wants you back as a New York Met. If you have less marketability, if you have less demand, naturally, you're cornered more in a position where the Mets are the team that's going to be bringing you back. And the Mets will have more leverage in comparison to as they did a year ago, even with having the qualifying offer attached versus not having it attached. I spoke to 3 different people, very credible in the industry, from last night to this morning. And the common consensus I heard from each of those 3 individuals was that Pete Alonso's market is not good at all. He is absolutely attending the winter meetings in direct hand because it is not good. And while the jury is still out as to if the Mets will meet with him officially at the winter meetings, there's something to be said about them not necessarily needing to, because the Mets are not inclined to bid against themselves in a way that they may do so for Edwin Diaz. Now, you may ask yourself, what do you mean bid against yourself? And what I mean is, if the Mets know that Pete Alonso is like pretty much for certain not going to get beyond 3 to tops 4 years, and if there isn't a clear urgency in his market right now because other dominoes need to fall, what makes you think the Mets are going to bend over backwards to be the top suitor for his services right away and get it done now? The Mets will have no problem letting this ride out a bit longer if it needs to, because the Mets, while they love Pete, don't necessarily view him as the priority this offseason. And I know this may come as a frustrating reality to some, but you have to understand there's an adamancy more than ever by this organization to right the ship with the rotation, right the ship with the bullpen, and right the ship with the organizational philosophy moving forward, which is increasing team defense while still having plenty of offense. And how can the Mets do that? How can the Mets go about increasing their team defense while improving their offense and finding themselves in a position where if they do not bring Pete Alonso back, they don't lose sleep over it, nor do Mets fans get as much an uproar and pitchfork and fire in hand as they otherwise would have? How do you evade that reality from coming to fruition? And here, ladies and gentlemen, is how you evade that reality. What you need to do is pretty simple. You just have to do what has been constantly relayed, and it is the following. Apologies for that audio just playing a second ago, everybody. The Mets have interest in Kyle Schwarber, reported again from Mike Puma. Team executives have shown interest in Kyle Schwarber, according to industry sources, potentially giving the lineup an unrivaled 1-2 punch along with Juan Soto. Now, let's make something abundantly clear. Did Mike Puma just give us breaking news? No. And this is not at all a slight on Mike. I'm just clarifying that this is not new news. This is something we've known very well. The Mets have had interest in Schwarber's market for easily the past north of 10 days, at least on record. We have covered every aspect of it all. I had Schwarber in my first video this offseason as to way too early targets for the Mets this offseason, because Schwarber makes a lot of sense for the Mets if A, they prioritize true power in the DH position, finally for a change, since it's become universal that we've known each of the past 4 seasons or so. Instead of this platoon nonsense where you have 2 guys that really aren't good, but when you try to combine them and say, oh, well, he smokes lefties and he smokes righties and works in limited sample sizes, I think the Mets need to deviate away from that, or at least do it to a greater degree than they've ever had before. And Kyle Schwarber is without a doubt one of, if not the best option for them to go ahead and land this offseason when looking at power implementation for specifically that position. Now, you also say to yourself, okay, Wardy, listen, if you get Schwarber, you're not getting Alonso. And my response to that is, you're probably right. Is there a role where they could bring both in? Possibly, but I'm not going to lose sleep over that becoming a reality, because there's a great reality that that'll never happen. There's a great reality that, listen, if the Mets sign someone like Schwarber, yes, you could give him a rep or 2 in the outfield, but that would be so counterintuitive to what you're trying to do as an organization to build your team defense. Playing Schwarber at any position other than DH does not help you in that regard. So, and the Mets are as adamant as we believe them to be, which is they don't want Alonso back unless he's willing to have more DH reps. It doesn't really I don't see a world at least where you can bring in Schwarber while having Alonso still part of this team. Is it possible that the Mets want Schwarber more than Alonso? This is something that I ponder, and I only ponder this to a degree, and I'll explain why. I ponder this in general because Schwarber would bring a culture change. Schwarber would bring a different element. Schwarber would bring a different dynamic to this clubhouse from what they had previously had. And this is not at all a slight on Pete Alonso nor his character or anything along those lines, but having a different voice of reason of a power bat in that locker room may do good for this organization just for the sake of having change. The same exact thing can be said with the Philadelphia Phillies after failing to hit the mark, which is a World Series championship with their core group each of the past 4 or 5 years. They've gotten close, but not close enough. And because of that, they are likely to make some key moves this offseason, some different moves than what they've done in years past. And while Schwarber is coming off of a career season with 56 home runs, 132 RBIs, 52% above league average, which was 10% better than Pete Alonso this past season, Schwarber also lacks the consistency terribly with the bat otherwise when looking at his contact ability. On base, he gets on base a lot because he gets walked a lot. He has a very good eye at the plate. Home runs galore, but took advantage of the batter's box half the year there in Philadelphia at the bank, and also will probably not have a season again with 56 home runs. This was a walk year for Schwarber entering his age 33 season. He knew that he needed a ball out to get the bag, and that's exactly what he's going to be getting on anywhere from a 3 to a 5 year contract. If the Mets are in a position where they could sign Schwarber now at, say, 3 years with a 4th year option or 4 years with a 5th year option, instead of waiting out however long the Alonso sweepstakes may be, there's a part of me that feels like that they will be inclined to do that because of what I just relayed. How dominant he would be with Soto and Lindor in this lineup. Even with the lefty heaviness, you would balance it because you, of course, would go after some other guys that would help balance things from the right side of the plate for this team, too. I would be very confident saying that that may increase the likelihood the Mets maybe try and go after more of a right-handed bat in the outfield than necessarily a left-handed, which you think of Luis Robert right away, even though I know Mets fans don't love the idea of him. Just using that as an example, the lefty bat with upside still that the Mets have had on their radar. Schwarber brings a lot of tangibles that I think are really good for this club, but here's why I only ponder this to a degree. It is MLB winter meeting season, okay? This is prime time when a lot of information is relayed to a lot of people in the industry, and the people that I know do a fantastic job there at the Post. There is still something to be said about why they are relayed certain information to make public about it. The agents want to push a narrative at times. And in this scenario, it very well could be, to a degree, that they're trying to put the pressure on the Mets are more than content with Alonso walking. So, Pete, stop being stubborn. Come back to us at the price point that we know that you should be valued at, because you're not going to get what you're looking for. That very well could hold true here. And why exactly is it that Kyle Schwarber needs to be the domino that falls first this offseason, or at least that's the anticipation as of now? There's a belief that he could sign as soon as these winter meetings. And one, that's good, because hopefully we see the floodgates really open soon as tonight, God willing. But something that I really think is important is the type of profile Schwarber is. He is being deemed as the biggest slugger in this year's market. Yes, many execs view Schwarber as more of a true power threat than Pete Alonso. And you may say that's inaccurate, and you may not agree with that assessment. That's fine. I'm just telling you what many people believe right now. This is not to slight Alonso, but many think Schwarber is the tip of the iceberg in this year's market. So when he falls, when that domino falls, then all the attention goes to Alonso. Then all the attention goes to Bellinger. Then all the attention goes to Tucker. Tucker's the best player in this year's market, no doubt. Apologies, everybody. We all know Tucker's the best player, you could rightfully argue, with the most upside still, the highest ceiling. But when you look at the other guys available currently, it could be a steady drop-off fast when looking at the position player talent. So someone needs to really break the tip of the iceberg here and get this thing going, so that way the rest of the teams can really get in the flurries the way that we're anticipating and hoping. Schwarber needs to sign first also, because many teams are contingent on their further decision-making based off of his decision. Meaning, if Schwarber goes back to the Phillies, and the Mets know that they can really continue to fully commit more in the Alonso market, or at least to whatever degree that they would like. If Schwarber does not return to the Phillies, then that changes the game plan for the Phillies and probably gives him a greater sense of urgency to go after one on Pete Alonso, to a degree Kyle Tucker, to a greater degree Cody Bellinger for them along those lines. If Schwarber signs with the Cincinnati Reds, the Pittsburgh Pirates, even though we know that isn't happening, or just a team that isn't as big market, then the Red Sox, the Mets, the Phillies enter a gauntlet fast of a bidding war where that could really benefit Alonso's market. Where even though that it's still going to be shrunk, and even though he won't have a vast array of suitors, the suitors that will be in his market may show a greater level of desperation and willingness to get into a bidding war, because they all respectively missed out on the top guy that they initially wanted. So that is why there's a lot at stake with Schwarber's market at the moment. And while it's not necessarily a guarantee that he will be the next big bat of a domino to fall, the most previous one was a guy like Josh Naylor going back to Seattle, for example, the point still stands. Many believe that Schwarber is the domino that needs to fall so the rest of the floodgates can finally start to open. I'll be surprised if a Kyle Tucker signs earlier. I won't be terribly surprised if a Cody Bellinger signs earlier, just because this market has been pretty steady and pretty consistent since the offseason has begun for the Yankees. But, and let me pull this up right now, everybody, just to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, no one notable. I saw a notification on my phone that I want to make sure I didn't need to address because like news or anything along those lines in real time here. But Schwarber, do I think he's very appealing to this Mets team? Yes. And I think you could even argue that if the Mets went about a world where they brought in Schwarber and brought in Bellinger, that's not bad. The only problem is you're so lefty heavy then. So maybe I just contradicted myself if I'm being frank. I mean, you could view it in the sense of if the Mets just kept Nimmo, in the sense of having a lefty bat for the outfield, but it would just be Bellinger instead of Nimmo, but you're replacing Alonso with Schwarber. And the power's similar. We know this. But age is a difference. Schwarber's a little bit older. And we also know that Schwarber's batting from the left side. So how would the Mets be able to supplement and balance the lineup with finding more righty power? And that's where you get creative. Do you go more in the trade market? Do you go more in the free agent market? Do you say, you know what? We got Schwarber at a price that we're comfortable with. Maybe let's go ahead and take a swing short-term high AV on Alex Bregman to see if he'd have an appetite to do something similar to what the Red Sox had done with him. But this time around, we'll give you even more than 40 million. Maybe we'll give you 45 million with an additional 5 million deferred each year. Like, who knows? So all I know is that the Mets are in a very unique position where they're not really backed in any corners at this point in time. They're involved in a lot of markets at the moment, and they really do look like that they're going to be rather satisfied with what unravels here in the next coming days, should there be anything significant happening on the winter meeting front. I've heard that the Mets love Schwarber. I don't know if they love him more than Alonso, but I know they like him a lot. It would be quite the trip if we saw a 2026 Mets roster with Kyle Schwarber as our star slugger to pair with Soto and Lindor. But then the downside is that Pete Alonso doesn't go to Boston, but the Phillies sign him. That's what I'm most concerned about, truthfully. I don't want to see a flip-flop like that. That feels like dirty work. It might benefit both sides greatly. Truthfully, there is a world where that could be illogical for both teams, and it makes sense, especially for the Mets' adamancy to have a better first baseman of defensive value, like a Ryan O'Hearn or like a Cosmo Akamoto, who I love, who we talked about a lot in last night's live show, and will again later on tonight. But point stands, Kyle Schwarber's market is heating up. I think both things can be true. On one hand, it's in hand to really kind of force things, move the needle a bit with what's happening with Alonso's market for the sake of playing this to the media. And I also think that, truthfully, the Mets do like Schwarber, and it will not be for a lack of effort in their attempts to land him this offseason. If the Mets do find themselves landing both Schwarber and Alonso by this offseason's end, I will more than happily give away a Kyle Schwarber brand new Mets jersey as a further excitement reaction to that news happening. Because it's one thing if we land Schwarber. It's another if the Mets go away from their philosophy, say, you know what, we're going to say F it with the team defense at first a little bit longer because we just want to make the nastiest lineup imaginable. Would not feel like the Stearns way, but hey, I love home runs, so that would be ecstatic. Again, it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but we can get a little crazy while the players are still available. Gives us an opportunity to think outside the box, even if it's idiotic. So let's go on from talking about Kyle Schwarber now. Let's get on to our next topic in this one, because we do have a couple more topics I would like to break down for each and every one of you in today's conversation. Don't hesitate again for making sure to chime into our live stream later on tonight, everybody, beginning around 8 p.m. Eastern, as we'll be breaking down more of the latest news and Mets rumors for our latest Free Agent Frenzy show, a Winter Meetings edition. Let's go up here. It's gonna be what is? Oh, I realize what's happening now. Give me 1 second. Okay, just gotta turn that volume off. Okay, my face. I did want to play this quick, everybody. There's a couple more things I want to talk about, including the signing of Carl Edwards Jr. for the New York Mets. But before we go ahead and do that, I did want to play this video for you guys quickly from Kelly Franco, follower of mine. Kelly does a very good job of doing, just MLB-wide reporting, but specifically focusing on the New York teams as well. Really enjoy her personality. She's bubbly, and this was her breakdown of the winter meetings today. Listen up, everybody. She's in attendance. I know my guy Robbie Hyde is there. Mike from Stark Raving Sports. Jolly. Many people in the space are at the winter meetings. I hope they're all having a blast. But Kelly did a very good job breaking it down and simplifying it for fans at home that don't really understand what the layout is like at winter meetings, as it's based in a hotel for the most part every single year.
Hi, it's Kelly Franco here at MLB's winter meetings. I thought you might want to know just what it looked like. So this is the Hilton Insignia in Orlando. As soon as you walk in the main entrance, the MLB network set is right there, right in the middle of the action. You got the cameramen, you got the cranes, you got everything right there. And then this is the main lobby. Every winter meetings has a main lobby where all the informal meetings take place. These aren't the secret meetings in the suites, but a lot of business gets transacted just buzzing around the lobby. It's still a little quiet now because it's early in the morning, but it's going to be teeming with people later. And back here, here's the most important part. This is the bar. The lobby bar at every winter meetings is the spot where all the fun happens and a lot of deals take place. This place at midnight will be packed cheek by jowl. Hi, it's Kelly from
Cheek by jowl. Love the wordplay. Thank you, Kelly, for the breakdown. We appreciate that. So yeah, nice little breakdown, especially to show you guys the bar layout. Because as we will be covering the live stream, it will be a very long live stream tonight for those that don't know. So we'll be a little tired, but we'll have a lot of fun with it. And that's where things get spicy, because you have a lot of agents, you have a lot of execs all chopping it up, all pounding drinks, all having a good time. And while they're getting loose and fun, This is while active negotiations for like top players are happening. So it's actually really cool. It's something that I do hope to take part in next year because we were not able to unfortunately make this year happen. Now let's go down a couple more things I want to relay. We'll go on to the Carl Edwards signing. Then we'll wrap up the show with Framber Valdez latest. And it begins here. As you guys can see, the Mets have signed Carl Edwards Jr. on a minor league contract. Now, this was initially broken from Will Salmon of The Athletic. Shout out to Will, always doing a fantastic job. But my initial reaction to the signing was Carl Edwards Jr., the same man who gave up the first ever home run in his career of, yes, Francisco Alvarez? Yes, you heard that correctly, everybody. Alvarez's first bomb, which was a towering one, if I'm not mistaken, at Citi Field against the Nationals. It was thanks to Carl Edwards Jr. giving him a meatball that he just absolutely smoked. So, what do the Mets get in Carl Edwards Jr., and how much of an impact is he going to have at the major league level? I'm here to tell you right now, do not expect this man to be a guarantee to win a job in the Mets bullpen. There's a great reality where he starts the year in AAA for the Mets, should he make the roster in general out of camp, but still not necessarily be much of a factor until the Mets need to call him up because of inevitable injuries and, of course, the bullpen carousel of needing to bring up guys because of you're pitching too many guys in too short period of time because the Mets, yet again, cannot get length from their rotation. Hopefully, that isn't as much of a problem this time around in 2026, but to be determined. Now, as you guys can see here, there's a couple of things I like about Carl, and one of the factors is he's actually really, not bad. You know, he is one of these guys that doesn't throw really hard. So, again, the upside is limited with someone like him, but he's had a lot of success as a major league reliever. So much so that in right around 300 career outings, he has a 3.5 ERA. So this is not someone that has completely lacked success in the major league level and had good stats this past season, albeit it was a very small sample size of just 6 innings across 2 different teams. When Edwards was not dealing with ailment, which has derailed his major league career each of the past couple years, he has been playing in the minor leagues. And when he's been in the minor leagues, he hasn't been terrible, but it's been fascinating. This year alone, he was on 2 different teams, 2 different AAA teams, and he was in 15 games, 50 innings. How do you get 50 innings in 15 games? Because he wasn't just a reliever. He started 8 of the 15 games in AAA. Furthermore, in 2024, in similar sample size, for the most part, he also got a chunk of starts at that level. So why would the Mets sign Carl Edwards Jr.? They didn't just sign him to be like this guy that could be a one-inning stopper for them. They signed him to be a guy that they're going to throw in when they need innings eaten, especially if it's garbage time, especially if it's because of a pitcher going down early and you just need a guy to kind of give you that Trevor Williams role for you and low leverage for a couple innings. That is more what Carl Edwards Jr. is going to provide to this Mets team should he impact them all at the major league level next season. Now, as I said, the expectations should be very limited in someone like him. You know, he's someone that, of course, didn't light the world on fire this past year, only had a very limited sample size. Numbers aren't terrible when he was out there, but very limited. You know, he has the four-seam fastball that he sits 93 to 95 plus on, that he had the curveball that he throws north of 80 miles per hour, changeup north of 90 miles per hour. Not a bad arsenal, but, you know, at least a little bit to be desired as well as to exactly what you're getting. Now, in 2023, the last season in which he had a respectable sample size at the major league level, he did post a 3.69 ERA, but a 1.5 whip. So, again, nothing sexy, 24 innings and 24 strikeouts and 31 innings. Just a guy that I think the Mets are going to get some innings out of because, as I mentioned, he really does kind of fall in that category of being a clear innings eater. And another guy in similarity to a degree of Craig Criswell, who the Mets just picked up off waivers recently from the Boston Red Sox organization. What these guys have in common, they're just guys that you kind of just want to throw out there as rubber arms for the most part, where they're viable if you need them at the major league level, but not ones that you want to depend on at the major league level. So you think of the Brandon Waddells, you think of the Justin Hagemans, all in similar stature is where I would say Carl Edwards Jr. falls in the category of. So nothing groundbreaking, but let's go on from talking about someone who has very limited value at the major league level to arguably the most valuable starter currently available in the free agent market. So what is the latest regarding Framber Valdez? We're going to talk a little bit more about this. We talked extensively about this to a degree in last night's live show, and I'll expand as to why that is and ultimately why there's contradiction going on in reporting. Let's get into it.
Some news. Hopefully you can help us with that. Maybe a Framber Valdez signing. We talked to him at the GM meetings. He was there. JP, good morning, by the way. He was meeting with teams. Where do we stand right now?
Lauren, good morning. Framber Valdez, among the free agent starting pitchers, there's probably as high or higher of a chance of Framber signing sometime this week as any other free agent starting pitcher. And it does go back to last month in Las Vegas during the GM meetings, Framber being there in person to speak with teams. Now, a couple teams that he spoke with that I think are really intriguing: the San Francisco Giants and the Baltimore Orioles, both of whom are still involved very much in the pursuit for free agent starting pitching. He also spoke with the Mets. Now, the Orioles, Mike Elias, the president of baseball operations there, he used to work.
All right, so there's an increasing belief, a higher of chance that Framber Valdez signs this week as any of the free agent pitchers. So John Morosi, always leaving you guys with that nice broad response. There's a higher of chance. Okay. What I'm about to say is nothing personal against John. I have went a little harder at him in the past, and I should not be doing that. I just mean this honestly. This is not the first time this has happened with Morosi, the same man whose current reputation is most known for being live on air on MLB Network stating how Shohei Ohtani was flying to Toronto to meet with the Blue Jays just a couple years ago. That was completely inaccurate, and he had to apologize to the world for it. Everyone makes mistakes, and I understand that one mistake should not define a person at all. But the issue that I have is that Morosi is not a newsbreaker by any stretch of the imagination, and everything that you realize has already been common knowledge. I mean, we've already known very well that Framber Valdez's market is picking up. That went in hand with the fact of him being at the GM meetings, as well as the fact that I've heard from many people in the industry over the past 72 hours that Valdez is expected to land somewhere soon. I can't say in confidence where that is, but I'm personally under the belief that it will be the New York Mets, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, if I'm being told certain information, I also know that Valdez is someone the Mets have liked. If the Mets can just get Valdez on, not 7 years, but something I think far more palatable at, say, 4 tops 5 years, I think that is very much in the realm of reason. But where the contradiction comes in with reporting, and again, you guys can, pick and choose who you want to believe more here. Andy Martino of SNY reported not long after the GM meetings, we're going all the way back to November 20th of this year, stating that the Mets were not among teams that met with Framber Valdez at the GM meetings, making a pursuit for him as of now, as of that time at least, unlikely. Things have changed on the pursuit of Valdez from Mets' point of view since then, from everything that I know. However, what hasn't changed is the fact that if you did not meet with him at the GM meetings, it's not like, oh, things have changed since then. No, if you either met with him or you didn't meet with him. So we have John Morosi on one hand saying the Mets met with him at the GM meetings, but we have Andy Martino, who's far more plugged in than John, works for SNY, has industry sources with the Mets, and I can tell you this in confidence as someone who's obviously been working in the space of SNY and the New York Post over the past couple of years, that between the two, until it's refuted, until it's proven otherwise, I'm more in the favoritism, believe it or not, of Andy. I know that may come as a surprise to some of you. I surprised myself plenty on that front. But while I don't necessarily agree with Andy much on personal opinion among other things, it doesn't mean that he's entirely wrong in everything he says. He's just notoriously known for throwing cold water on things, as Mets fans don't want to hear it, including myself. But I will say this, not that it really means much, because I do believe the Mets are in Valdez's market. I just would like to reiterate the fact that from my understanding, from what has been reported, it does not appear that Framber Valdez actually ever met with the Mets at the GM meetings. So what does that entail for the winter meetings? Well, I think what it entails is that the Mets have obviously kept a dialogue with Valdez. We just don't know to what degree right now. But he's someone who checks off a lot of boxes for teams that are looking for ace caliber upside starters and guys that can give you north of 200 innings each of the next couple seasons. I have a lot of concern with Valdez when looking at more of a long-term deal. And reporting has come out today that the Mets really don't have much of an appetite for a long-term deal through Will Salmon of The Athletic. It was reported earlier this morning that the Mets really don't love the idea of going long-term for any free agent starter right now. But that's kind of common sense. Like, we already knew that. No one's expecting the Mets to bend over backwards for Framber Valdez at 7 years. At least I know I'm not. No one's expecting the Mets to do that for Zach Gallen. Zach Allen, Michael Caine types are in the Sean Manaea contract range of 3 years, $75 million, or 4 years at $100 million, I think is far more palatable and realistic for the Mets than going like a Dylan Cease, 7 years, $200+ million for a guy with a 4.5 ERA this past year. Now, Cease is very good, so I'm not trying to define him for his ERA, but I'm saying even with that inflated baseline ERA, he got that bag. Valdez's market is different, though. He's a couple years older, has a greater track record, no doubt, World Series champion, Cy Young caliber pitcher, you name it. But he is someone that isn't getting younger, and there has been some, questions as to what is he like as a clubhouse character. And I've only heard glowing things from inside the Astros organization, but, you can take that to heart or you can take it with a grain of salt, to each your own. Obviously, they're going to do what they think is best to help Valdez and his market as well when talking in regards of his former manager and former teammates and things of that nature. Valdez, though, is someone who I'll be genuinely surprised if he gets a 7-year contract. How much of a bidding war is there really going to be for Framber Valdez in this year's free agent market? I don't think it's going to be anything too absurd. Do you think it will be? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But in my honest opinion, I do think Framber Valdez, should he land anywhere, whether that's the New York Mets or somewhere else this week, whether it's the Baltimore Orioles, what have you, I really do think it's far more palatable and likely that he lands in the 4 to 5 year category than 7. And I think that's in the realm of possibility for the Mets. Where I think the Mets may have a hard line in the sand, as much as I don't want this to be the case, is more on a Tatsuya Imai, who I love from the MPB. I think the Mets like Imai a lot, but I think the Mets might not love the idea of even going 6 years plus for Imai, even though he's entering just his age 28 season. I think that it makes a lot of sense to go north of 6 years with someone like him. But if you could find more in the sweet spot of a 5-year deal with maybe a club option for the 6th year, then maybe that's something the Mets consider, even though I could see why they would not love it. Because, again, you don't want to give out these long-term deals. And while I do not believe that this market really warrants long-term deals at all, it ain't like last year where you had some more ace-caliber upside talents in that market, even with their health uncertainty, like a Blake Snell, for example. What I also know, and I think of this all the time, is the Andrew Friedman quote. I believe his name's Andrew, first name, Friedman, who runs ship there for the LA Dodgers from the Rays organization. I think of his famous quote that he gave a couple years ago in the offseason, which is that if you prioritize being rational about every free agent decision, you will always come in second place. And that's 100% true. And that's why the Dodgers have had to break out of that stigma and that mentality in order to make their big swings, make their big splashes, and ultimately now have back-to-back World Series championship success. So for David Stearns and the Mets, this is something that we've reiterated. While the market is not necessarily looking great for guys that are deserving of these long-term deals, depending on what the trade market brings for you and the guaranteedness of making significant deals happen, you may have to go out your way to put up an additional year or two on a player that you otherwise didn't want to do. But you don't lose sleep over, and here's why. You just got out of Brandon Nimmo's contract of 5 remaining years when he has a little defensive value. You have gone out of many contracts in the past under Steve Cohen, including eating the end of bad contracts. So what makes you think you wouldn't be able to do the same with Framber Valdez? I just find it very silly, the notion that that could be a decider when you're buying into Valdez for the next 2 to 3 seasons. You're not buying into him now for what he does in the latter half of, say, a 6-year deal. But if you get him, again, 4 to 5 years, I think is far more realistic and hopefully likely for whether it's the Mets, whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the Giants, one of these top contending teams going after starters in this year's free agent class. But Mets fans, that's going to do it for today's breakdown, our first of 2 breakdowns. Like I said, we'll be live again today. Make sure to check it out right around 8 p.m. Eastern. We might start just a smidge after 8 p.m., but our goal is in that range today, everybody. So be on the lookout. We'll be live for a very long time tonight. We'll be answering all of your questions, as many as we can possibly get to. And we'll be live reacting and analyzing all latest things in Mets land in real time together. So if any big news happens tonight, rest assured we'll be live together to break it down. We'll be live at minimum a couple hours, and what'll dictate is if we go beyond midnight will really be in hand with the reporting at that time. If things are really spicy, really hot, then we'll stay on for however long we got to be on. Otherwise, we'll come off after a period of time, and then should the news get finalized, we'll hop right back on, because I still will not go to bed tonight until pretty much I know for certain that no more moves are happening in baseball. But thank you guys again. Appreciate your thoughts in the comments down below and all that we broke down. I'll see you all later tonight for our big jersey giveaway and night 2 of MLB Winter Meeting coverage. Have a great one, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets.